What made me want to study abroad was thinking about places that I'd already been and any places that I hadn't gone that I still wanted to go to. So when I looked at the list, I noticed there was Washington, D.C. and various places overseas, and I wanted to focus more on what could actually help me in terms of my career.
I actually knew that I wanted to do the Washington program before I even decided to come to Notre Dame because I'm interested in politics, particularly American politics, and DC is obviously the center of all of that. And so I knew that I wanted to work during the election season, which would have been fall of '08. So it all just worked out perfectly for me.
During the Washington, D.C. program, I interned with the Department of Homeland Security.
Plus, I was working at the White House in the fall of '08, so it was obviously the center of a lot of the things going on politically at that time. So I just felt really privileged to be so central to something I was so interested in.
I think what makes the Washington program one of the best experiences that Notre Dame has to offer is the fact that although it's not necessarily studying abroad as most students would think of the term, it's really something that gives you a good perspective on what life beyond college really is like.
My favorite class that I took in DC was my art history class, which was a wonderful class to take in DC because there are so many cultural opportunities to get out and actually see the art that you're studying. So I had a really great professor that would, teach us everything we needed to know about the art, but then take us and show us around. So not only was I getting a really good overview of American art history, but I also had such a more fulfilling experience when I went to museums on my own because I felt like I actually kind of knew what I was doing, and that was a really great experience to have.
Classes are definitely a lot different than the classes on campus. For the most part, they're smaller than any classes I've had. They're much more discussion-based. They're a lot of fun. That's nice.
And by far my favorite class is public policy with Kellen Burt. The fact that we get to go somewhere in the city during every week, whether it be the Supreme Court or like today a lobbyist, it's just so exciting because, hello, we're in Washington, D.C., we want to be able to see things.
The fact that everything the professor talked about directly related to your experience in Washington, D.C.
I loved living in D.C., particularly because the Boston University building where we lived was right in the heart of D.C.
In the Boston University Center, even though we're not living in the same room as different genders, we definitely have much more of a sense of community with them.
I love Woodley Park and the fact that we're just a block or two away from Adams Morgan, which is just an eclectic center for living.
Because it's small enough that you really get to know the people you're living with, and you kind of feel like you're living on your own, but you have the support of Notre Dame behind you, which is really reassuring.
So living in Washington, D.C. Was an out-of-this-world experience. Just living in D.C., it's just amazing. You have to live there to know what I'm talking about. But.
I love the DC program. I would definitely recommend it to anybody who's interested in politics, in public policy, really anything that you want to do, you can do in DC. So it's a great program.
I don't think I could have made a better choice of a program, a study abroad type program.
I think it's a great program, and I know people have talked about it as being like Notre Dame's little secret, and I think that's totally true. It's such a gold mine to be able to come here in DC, live in a city for a semester, which you don't get that experience living in South Bend, Indiana, going to ND. And then not only do you live in the city and experience that itself, you get an internship wherever you would like and get some real world experience in any field.
The great thing about the DC experience for me is that it really set up everything that I want to continue doing in my career and just in my studies here at Notre Dame. And I really think that the type of immersion experience that I had in the working world isn't something that I could have gotten while I was still on campus. So